Hey, what's up, stock compounders? Brad here. So on August 26th, it was released through SEC filings what Phil Town did in the Rule 1 fund for the second quarter of 2020. Now, this was not an easy document to find. So big shout out to my subscriber Family Dinner for linking to this filing for Phil Town's fund. So I will link to this, but this is, as of June 30th, 2020, what is owned by the Rule 1 fund that Phil Town manages. And then I'll also link to the annual report, which shows what was owned at the end of the first quarter in 2020. But to make it easy for you guys, I made a spreadsheet comparing what was owned at the end of March, the end of the first quarter, versus the end of June, the end of the second quarter, which is the most current information we have about what Phil Town is investing in. So let's take a look at this. There are 11 stocks here. There's actually one new one and two that Phil Town completely sold off, okay? So the ones he sold off, Goldman Sachs and Southwest Airlines. Now, I'm assuming a big part of that was that Berkshire Hathaway sold out of both of those companies in, Goldman Sachs was largely in the first quarter, but the rest in the second quarter. And then Southwest, I believe, was primarily sold off in the second quarter. And Phil Town is a big follower of Warren Buffett, so I imagine that had a big influence on those two positions for him. So he's out of Goldman, he's out of Southwest. He bought a new position in Armada Hoffler Properties, which is a real estate investment trust, a REIT. I think it's got like a 5% dividend yield at the moment. Put a lot of money into it. The current value, assuming he still has the same number of shares now at the end of August as he did at the end of June, the current value would be, $3.8 million, which is significantly larger than his holding in Seritage growth properties. So I was surprised to see another REIT that a new purchase for a REIT that's larger than his position in Seritage. He did increase his Seritage position by 37%, which is a pretty good chunk of change, from 134,000,000 shares up to 183,000 shares, give or take. So that was interesting to see. What else? Boeing, massive increase in that position. Now, the reason that position increased is because Phil Town had sold put options on Boeing. And because the price dipped below the strike price of 165, it sounds like the person he was in the contract with for those put options exercised. And so, Phil Town was forced to buy those shares at $165 per share. So he more than doubled his equity position in Boeing in the second quarter. Similar situation for Berkshire Hathaway. He was selling puts on BRK.B shares. He had a $180 strike price. And, it dipped below that and the person exercised. So he doubled his position in Berkshire Hathaway. And then just a decent increase in Bank OZK, which is his largest equity holding. So you can see here, this is the prices as of today, Saturday, August 29th. Again, I don't know how many shares he owns of these as of August 29th, so I'm making my best assumption that he still has the same number of shares that he had on June 30th, which is the only information that we have access to. And then I inserted today's prices to get a sense for, how much money are these holdings currently worth, okay? So it's not an exact science. These share counts may have changed, but this is a best estimate. So we can calculate the value of those equity positions in the Rule 1 fund. And then what I did is I took a percentage. So I added up all of those equity positions, and he's got just over 33 million in these stocks. And then you can see of these 9 stocks that he currently holds, what is the percentage? What is the allocation to those stocks? And you see his biggest holding, Bank OZK. Second largest is this Ruger, which is a gun manufacturer. And then you've got this new REIT in third place, CF Industries in fourth place, and then Berkshire Hathaway in fifth place. Now, it's funny when I do these on what Robinhood investors are buying, there tend to be less than half, maybe half, a little less than half, that have Value Investors Club write-ups recently. You can see here, what is that? 9 of the 11 have Value Investors Club write-ups in the last couple of years. And you can see these write-up thesis, what the price was when these write-ups were done. So you can kind of get a sense, this investor thought, almost 2 years ago that at $31, Gildan, had a lot of upside still. And you can see Gildan has dropped down to $20. So that could be an interesting one to look at. Another interesting thing here, there's a short write-up for Ulta Beauty at $239, which is pretty close to what the price is today. And in that short write-up, there was some concern about beauty products now, kind of the sales of beauty products moving to platforms like Instagram and different social media platforms. That investor thought that shift to selling beauty products on those platforms might steal market share away from Ulta Beauty. And then you can see the number of super investors, which is something that I really track closely. How many super investors own these 11 companies? And when there's a plus there, that means the super investors bought in the second quarter of 2020, either buying new, not having owned in the first quarter of 2020, or just adding to their position. So, a lot of these aren't well covered by super investors, just 1 or 2 that are in them. This recent REIT purchase, there's no super investors that own that. So that's very interesting. And then you can see here, Berkshire and Goldman, lots of super investors in there. So just thought that was interesting. So this is just kind of a snapshot at the end of June, what is owned by Phil Town in terms of equity. There's also some information. I think there's just one put option that was sold in the second quarter, and that was for Boeing. So, not as much activity with put options in the second quarter versus, I guess the first quarter may have actually covered that whole year from March 31st, 2020 to March 31st, 2019. I'm not quite sure how to track the filings yet for Rule 1. They seem to be jumping around a little bit. It was actually really hard to find this quarterly kind of disclosure of holdings. It was under the umbrella of World Funds Trust, and there were a bunch of other funds that had filed these same forms. So not easy to find, but that's what we got right now for the latest on Phil Town, quarter 2, 2020. curious to hear from you guys. Let me know if you're buying any of these. I was particularly interested to do this because I just started reading Phil Town's book, Rule 1 Investing. I feel really late to the party on that. I think it was published more than 10 years ago, maybe like 2007. So, but it's a great book. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm definitely going to do kind of a summary of the book once I finish. And it would also be interesting to kind of run those metrics that Phil Town uses on his current holdings to kind of see where they stand in terms of return on invested capital, EPS growth, revenue growth, you know, the important things that Phil Town looks at when determining whether or not a company might be a good investment. So that's all I got, guys. Let me know, you know, if you're buying any of these, if you're intrigued by any of them. And I will see you guys in the next video. Oh, and like I said, I will link to these filings in the description. So take a look more deeply at those if you're curious. All right, guys, see you in the next video.